Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, John Barker. And as you're watching the set, John's on the far side of it, be your left side of it, my right here. And in the middle is Dan Hawkins, House Majority Leader from Wichita, the 100th District. And Dan, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Doug.
And as you know, if you've been watching the show before, why John comes in on every Friday that he can when the legislature's in session, and hadn't been able to get away for the past 2 weeks because there's been a lot going on in the legislature. And so, John, this is Friday afternoon, and this week you were able to get away about 2 o'clock or so and be able to get here. And so thank you for coming in.
That's okay, Doug, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone. It's Valentine's Day, and Doug, I really had a special guest. I was going to bring April today, my Valentine.
Yes.
Because I wanted her to talk about what the wives do in Topeka while we're, not just the wives, the spouses.
Sure, right.
But she's a little under the weather, and so I had to get, he's not my Valentine.
No, he's not your Valentine, but he's a good guy.
But he's a good guy, you're exactly right. But so hopefully, I've talked to April about coming in at some future date to come in, just talk about the wives and the spouses and what they do. They're usually busy about 2 days a week. Some of the spouses come up and stay the entire week. April doesn't do that, but it is interesting. They go on a lot of tours, and they have a number of charities they work for, the spouses do. So I really, at some point in time, I really want to have her on. Just Valentine's Day didn't work.
Right. And I understand, and of course, people don't realize about the hours that you put in when it's in session, and even when it's not, because there's a lot of duties to do when you're not in session. But it's tough for families because there's families and you got activities to do and everything else, and that all goes on the back burner when you guys are in session, and it's a lot of work, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, and I know Dan's a new grandpa here, and he misses that. But I think your daughter came down with your grandson here about a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago. She was actually in Manhattan on business and stopped by the Capitol and spent the night at the hotel, so I got to see my grandson.
Oh, that's awesome.
And what's his name?
His name's Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah. Good one. That's a good one.
Actually, his name's Gavin, but when he's at my house, his name's Rocky.
Rocky, huh?
Yeah.
So, the spouses are a really important part of as a legislator, and so we're all anxious to get home for Valentine's. A number of us left, some of the folks that are 5 or 6 hours away left this morning.
Right.
So they could get home. But so yeah, at some point in time, hopefully my Valentine will be here, and she'll get to talk about the spouses.
Love to have
groups.
April here.
But other than that, we've had a busy 2 weeks. Last Friday we were sitting in the House for 5 hours, and Dan, we'll talk about that in the second segment. But what's really good for the district is Thursday, the Department of Commerce awarded their block grants. We had 3 communities in our district, or my district, that received the block grants for different projects. Chapman received $600,000 for their water treatment plant. Solomon received $600,000 for their project, and Marion, in Marion County, City of Marion, also received $600,000. A couple of city managers were up. Roger and John from Chapman was up. That'll help. It doesn't pay for the entire projects, but we put in $17 million, and it was awarded out on the community development block grants, and it was competitive. So they did a really good job, those cities, in writing their grants. So I'm glad that they were able to get that, and hopefully offset some of the costs for Chapman and Solomon and Marion. But
I don't know how Chapman would have been able to fund that, because I remember having some of those conversations with them, and that we're in Chapman as we filmed this, and I know they were concerned. We've got to do this because we don't have any choice. The plant is compromised, and we've got to do something. So I'm sure they're delighted that you were able to help them get that $600,000 grant.
And as I say, it doesn't pay for the entire project, but it does help. And they're building the plant out to the east of town.
Right.
And, they've got it's a pretty big project that they've got to undertake. They've been given every extension that's possible, and there are no more extensions.
Right.
So
It's always good when you have a great representative bring home the money for you.
It is.
Yeah.
It certainly helps, and I've said it multiple times. When you get a representative or a senator that's been in there for years and years, they work up in through the various committees and wind up in leadership positions, and that's what John's been able to do. That's tremendous.
But we'll talk about the value them both amendment probably the next segment. But basically, I've got the sports book, which is House Bill 2671, that's been read in now. So folks that are interested in sports book can follow that on the legislative website. This week I had a hearing on the Smoking 21 bill, which is moving the smoking age from 18 to 21 to comply with the federal statute that and the spending bill under Trump was passed. And one day we had Brookville Chicken in Topeka last Wednesday. The tourism had their at the Capitol day at the Capitol, and they had Brookville cater it.
Really?
And it was great.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, we had probably 100 legislators come in plus other guests and stuff, and it was very enjoyable. It's good to have Brookville Chicken at the Capitol.
Well, listen, John, speaking of Brookville Chicken, this will be a good time to cut away, take a break.
Okay.
And as soon as we come back,
Do you have any chicken out here?
We don't have any more chicken out here. It didn't. They didn't stop here on their way.
Okay.
And when they came back, why, there wasn't any left.
Well, that's true.
All right. We'll be right back. You're watching Legislative Updates. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker, and our special guest, Dan Hawkins from the 100th District in Wichita. And John, you were kind of filling us in on what's happened here in the past week or two at the legislature.
Well, last Friday, the reason Dan and I were not here is that we had a constitutional amendment called Value Them Both Amendment, which is the putting the statute that we have I guess passed in the last 20-some years as to abortion regulations with the Supreme Court decision in the Napier case was thrown out in April. So we have a constitutional amendment. And Dan, how did the vote go?
For those who don't follow the State House through live streaming and don't see all of the things that we do, it was an interesting time for many of us. Doug, a lot of times what happens, so we have debate one day and then we come back the next day and actually have a final action vote. When we get into that final action vote, there's really no debate. We're just trying to get the votes. We're just trying to get enough votes, and generally there's people gone, and so we do what we call a call of the House, and basically that is. We sat there, we're waiting for people to come back in to get their vote registered, and sometimes that can take hours. One of our guys was quite a ways away, but it gives us time to work on really getting the votes. So on a constitutional amendment, and on this Value Them Both amendment, is a constitutional amendment for life, we have to have 84 votes in the House, 27 votes in the Senate. At 84, that's 2/3 of our members, and that's a very difficult hurdle to make. It always is. So we have 84 Republicans. Right. The Democrats, the governor had pretty much locked up the Democrats against that. They weren't, not a one of them moved. No. They didn't flinch. They didn't vote for it. So we needed all 84. We got to 80, and we were there 5 hours, and there just wasn't any movement. So finally, after 5 hours, I talked with the speaker and we shut it down, took the vote. It was really kind of the first salvo. We really needed to find out where we were at, who was going to vote. And so we know that now, and through this last week, we've been working it all week long. There is some movement. Whenever you get into those situations, that may be one of the most important things we'll do in our life up there. In our career, that one vote is the most important thing. 15 babies are dying a day from abortion, and basically what the Supreme Court did in their decision, and you're an attorney, you know all about it. They just said that there's a right to an abortion in the Constitution now, clear up to and including birth. And that's scary. I mean, that is truly a scary thing. A viable baby that could live outside the womb could be aborted and killed. And so it's a very important thing for us to do. We do know those 4 people who are on our Republican side who didn't vote with us. Been a lot of pressure put on them this past week. There's actually been rallies in their hometown. There's a lot of pressure being put on to get them to come on board. You know, we feel with what's going on right now that we have a shot. Well, we do have another vehicle. John had the House resolution that he passed through his committee is still below the line, so we'll be able to bring that up when we're ready and vote on it again. So we're working through that situation right now.
Yeah.
So that's not the end of it.
No, it's not.
And what's interesting is we've got a number of pro-life Democrats, and it was very difficult for them to take this vote. And I talked to several of them, and they said, well, we have our marching orders. We've always voted on pro-life issues. We're not voting on this one, and we probably should, is what one of them told me. I said, well, you know, you need to go back and talk to your governor and get her to release you from that. Because, you know, you've got to go home to your home districts, and Dan's correct. They've had a number, the Republicans, you know, we work for the people. And when your constituents come out and say, you know, you need to be supporting something, you need to do that. But hopefully we'll get another shot at it. But it takes time. You know, the legislative process is slow, and sitting there for 5 hours, well, you have to sit at your desk. You've got to ask for permission to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, and you better get on that list and go to the bathroom.
And as you well know, that's old English law. That keeps one legislator going to another one's desk and trying to coerce them into changing their vote. So the only thing you could do is call them on their phone, but you can't actually go over to their desk. And that's just old English law, and I think all states do that when you go to a call of the House or a serious final action vote.
So really where we're at right now, Doug, is the Senate passed it originally, so they've already done their work. We failed, so they're really not going to do anything until we bring up our next resolution and take our next shot at it. But before we do that, we want to have the votes. So we're constantly working and talking to people and you know, trying to listen really well and figure out what they want, what's their concerns. So when we do take that next vote, we win this. This is probably, it's not probably, it is the most important vote. In John and I's 8 years that we've been there, this is the most important vote.
Yeah.
Because parent consent is out the window now.
Yeah.
A 16-year-old can go get an abortion without the parents knowing about it.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
And so we put all those regulations over the years. We're not banning abortion. We just have certain requirements such as parental consent.
Informed consent.
And it has to be performed by a doctor, a medical doctor, a medical procedure. So all of those are out the window now. So we're just trying to put the law back prior to what it was prior to April when the Supreme Court made the decision.
Wow. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. Be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker, and in the middle between us is Dan Hawkins from the 100th District from Wichita. And you guys have been passing on the information about what's taken place in this legislature for this past week or two. And where do you want to go from here?
Well, I think Dan wants to talk about the EROs, and they don't come through my committee.
No,
so as majority leader, he has to handle all of that. So Dan?
One of the few things John doesn't get a touch up there is so an ERO is an executive reorganization order. Every new governor, once they get in and they look at the system, they propose changes to our structure. And this governor is no different. She came out about halfway through, well, it's probably towards the end of January. Actually, I think we received them January 30th with 3 reorganization orders. One of them was actually came from our remember in 2016 we had that A&M study where we studied ways to make our government more efficient. Well, one of those was a move to bring the state employee health plan out of Kansas Department of Health and Environment and move it back over under the administration part, where half of the employee benefits are already at. So it made sense. That actually made sense, and that's going to happen. She came out with 2 other reorganization orders that are very difficult. One of them, it's ERO 44, is to combine DCF, the Department of Children and Families, and the Kansas Department of Aging and Disabilities, KDADS, and Juvenile Justice into one big behemoth agency. Those two, the DCF and KDADS, are really our most embattled agencies. Those are where all of our problems are at. And they were separated to try to get a better hold of them. Now all of a sudden she wants to lump this into one big behemoth, and when you have that big of a bureaucracy, it's really hard to make it work. It will not save any money whatsoever. Not a dollar.
And Doug, you'll remember SRS.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, basically.
And that's, remember, and the state broke it down because they had juveniles, they had the age, the senior part, they had the entire. It was at that time it was a couple of $1 billion. This is even bigger now, and so we're putting it back together. And well, at least the governor wants to put it back together.
Yeah, the governor does, and so our committees. We actually had 2 committees, the Social Services Budget Committee and then Appropriations, look at it. And they came out with their finding this week and said we need to not do that. So they gave us a resolution to stop that ERO.
Well, what would be the reason for doing it?
She says that they could talk better if they were together. Well, they're not going to be co-located. They'll still be in separate locations. She can't. There is absolutely nothing that they would do then that they can't do now. It's just that they really just want to throw this all back together.
And why would you want to put juveniles in with the seniors, family seniors? It just doesn't make any sense. We moved, years ago when SRS, they had a commissioner for each of those.
Right.
But the services were just bad. I mean, the state recognized that it was too big a bureaucracy, so that's the reason they broke them out.
Yeah.
And now she has one secretary, right, for both?
Right, she does. She currently has one secretary for both of those agencies. So that's one that pretty much everybody is on board with. I don't think there's a whole lot of people who think that that's a good idea. But here's the big one. The one that the governor is really kind of fighting to get the most is the energy ERO. We have an energy office in the Kansas Corporation Commission. She wants to extract that energy office out, get it underneath the administration, and I'm going to liken it to this. Everybody knows about AOC and her Green New Deal. She proposed a Green New Deal, and it was just all kinds of stuff on carbon credits and doing away with fossil fuels, all this stuff. And then, of course, good old Bernie, he picked up the mantle and he's running with it in this campaign. Well, basically what our governor wants is she wants to extract that energy agency out of the Kansas Corporation Commission, put it under her agency so she can develop her Green New Deal. If you go, there's actually a website out there called greennewdealstats.com. If you go in there and you click on Kansas, it'll show you exactly what the Green New Deal would cost Kansas. And it's 127,000 jobs and about $327 a month extra for each person in the form of energy costs. It would increase our costs for our energy. So the governor wants to take that, put it underneath her so she can come out with her Green New Deal. Quite frankly, it's interesting. I've had 2 people from her administration in my office this week, and both of them were lobbying for us not to stop that. It actually was heard in the Energy and Utilities Committee this week. It was a very contentious debate. They did kick the bill or the resolution out negatively and say don't do it. So those 2 things are actually on my desk right now waiting for me to bring them up. The governor's lobbying us hard. She wants those things. I don't think she's going to get them. It's going to be tough for her.
I don't think the members of her party will vote for it.
I don't think so either.
I mean, when you're talking about what the increase in utilities bills are going to be, the loss of jobs. I mean, we're always trying to create new jobs, and with this deal, we're going to lose all those jobs. We'll have to see when you bring it up for a vote and just see how the vote goes. But
Yep.
I don't think it'll pass either.
Will that happen next week?
No, we could do maybe one next week, but we actually have until March 30th. There is a
Okay.
deadline, so we have to take action by March 30th or they automatically become law.
Okay. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. Be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker. And John, thank you so much for stopping in and
I'm glad
bringing
Dan could
Dan
make
in.
it. He's not my Valentine's, but I'm glad he made it today.
I'm glad he made it too. And we're going to put the contact information for Dan and for John up on the screen. You'll be able to communicate to them. And next week, are we going to bring in Jim Denning going to come in?
The majority leader of the Senate will be in, and we'll talk a little about what's going on in the Senate.
Okay.
If anything's going on.
Yeah,
in the
if
Senate.
anything, huh? I'm sure there'll be a lot going on, and
Yeah.
Jim's always very informative, and just like you are, Dan, we appreciate you taking time, come from Topeka on your way home, and you stop here, and really appreciate it.
But you know,
Thank
we
for
really
sharing.
think the House is better than the Senate.
Well, that's true.
I
I agree
understand,
with that.
because
I
you guys
agree.
are both in the House, huh? Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching Legislative Updates. Next week, we will see you at this same time. And John will bring in Jim Denning, and we'll have an awfully good show. It'll be fun. Be sure you tune in.